Eli stood on the edge of the glowing cliff with two suns behind him and silver dust floating in the sky. The stars above were brighter than anything on Earth, and the blue grass beneath his boots felt like velvet. He looked out over the valley below, where lights from the alien village flickered like fireflies. He was not supposed to be here this long, not with her, not with Ziriatsaria stood beside him, tall, graceful, her skin shimmered like moonlight, her eyes glowed with soft blue light. She had long silver hair that floated gently in the wind. Her voice was always calm, always measured, but tonight she had not said much. She watched the stars just like Eli did in silence, the air between them full of unsaid words and strange energy. They had worked together for 3 years on this peace mission. They had traveled through star systems, fought in battles, healed wounded, built homes for aliens and humans together, and through all of it, Eli had felt something grow inside him, something warm, something deep, something he never had the courage to say until now. He took a slow breath and looked at her, his hands slightly shaking, his heart beating fast like a drum. He knew it was not the right time or place, but no moment ever felt right before, and he had held it for too long. Zaria, he said her name, soft like a whisper. She turned to him, eyes meeting his for the first time in what felt like forever. I have loved you for years, he said, his voice breaking with the weight of the truth. I know I should not, but I do. I always have. Zaria blinked once, twice. Her face stayed still, her body froze like a statue. Her eyes wide, not in anger, not in fear, but in shock. She did not speak, she only stared at him, the silence louder than anything he ever heard. Her glowing eyes searched his face as if looking for something, a lie, maybe a joke, maybe, but there was nothing except truth before she could speak. Something loud roared across the sky, a red light flashed on the horizon, then another. Then the sound of explosions echoed through the valley. The enemy was here again. Not even a moment of peace lasted long on this planet. Warning alarms from the base began to scream. The ground shook. Eli stepped forward, grabbed Zariah's arm, and pulled her down the slope. We have to move now, he shouted over the noise. Come on. She nodded, but said nothing and ran with him side by side, just like they always did. They moved through the jungle, trees that glowed purple and blue in the night, their boots splashing in shallow alien water. The sky above turned red with fire falling from the sky. Enemy ships zoomed past, shooting lasers into the forest. Trees burned behind them, but they kept running. They reached an old supply shack made of metal and stone. They rushed inside, and Eli locked the door. He leaned against the wall, panting, looking at her. She still said nothing, her eyes still fixed on him. You didn't say anything, Eli said, his voice low, unsure. I told you something real back there. I told you what I feel. Do you feel nothing? At Zaria finally spoke, her voice soft and full of conflict. I heard you, Eli. I heard every word, and my heart is not quiet either, but I cannot say what you want to hear. Not now, not yet. Why not? He asked, stepping closer. Is it because I am human? Zariah looked away, her voice trembling. I was trained to stay calm, to stay focused. Emotions cloud the mind. Love is not part of my path. My people would never accept it. I was not even supposed to grow attached. But you did, he said. I see it, I feel it every time you look at me, every time you save me. Another explosion hit nearby. The walls shook. Eli moved to the window to check the sky. A ship was falling in flames, spinning down into the forest. That's close, he said. We need to get to the command bunker. Zaria nodded, but still hesitated before leaving. She turned to him, her voice lower than a whisper. You risked your life to tell me something that could end everything, and still I said nothing, not because I do not care, but because I care too much. Eli stared at her, heart pounding. She stepped forward for just a second, their faces inches apart. The moment burned into his memory forever. Then she stepped back and opened the door, the fire outside lighting her face like a goddess. Let us survive tonight, she said. Then we will talk about hearts and stars. And with that, she disappeared into the smoke and fire. Eli followed, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but knowing now he had told her the truth, and that truth had changed everything. Smoke filled the air as Eli and Zariah ran through the burning jungle, trees glowing purple and blue under a sky painted with red fire behind them. Enemy drones swarmed like angry wasps, shooting beams that melted stone and sliced through trees without mercy. But the two of them did not stop. They moved like shadows together, fast, silent, focused. The ground shook under their feet with each blast. The heat rising from the forest floor made breathing Harder, the fire was chasing them like a wild beast, alive and hungry. The stars above were hidden now, replaced with black clouds and orange. Flamisaria jumped over a fallen tree and turned back her silver hair, catching the red light. She shouted something, but the noise of explosions swallowed her voice. Eli just nodded and followed her deeper into the trees. He could still feel the weight of his words from earlier, the confession. Still fresh, still raw, still unanswered. His chest burned, not just from the smoke, but from the silence between them. Her reaction had confused him, hurt him, given him hope. All at once she had looked at him, with eyes full of emotions, and yet said nothing real, nothing clear, just silence and then fire. They reached a broken hill where the ground had cracked from old battles. Beneath the hill was a cave half hidden behind vines and glowing roots. Zariah pulled him inside just as a drone passed over their heads, missing them by inches. Inside the cave it was dark and quiet, except for the sound of their breathing and the distant roar of burning trees. Eli leaned against the wall, wiped his forehead, and looked at her, her face calm, but her eyes filled with questions. You still haven't told me how you feel, he said, his voice tired and heavy. I don't need a perfect answer, I just need to know if what I said mattered to you. Zarya walked slowly to the back of the cave, her fingers trailing across the stone as if reading the old markings left behind by someone long gone. Her voice finally broke the silence, soft like wind through leaves. Your words were not small, Eli, they were heavy like the stars above, and I have never known how to hold something so heavy. He stepped closer, confusion in his eyes. Then tell me, why not just say what you feel or don't feel? I can take it, but the not knowing is harder than the fire outside. She turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I have always admired you, Eli, your heart, your strength, your way of finding laughter in the worst of times, but I was not created to love. I was trained to serve my people, to follow rules, to protect the mission, and feelings like love are not part of that path. Eli's face changed slowly, sadness mixed with something deeper. He nodded once, then sat on a flat stone near the wall, his voice quiet and calm. I never wanted to make things hard for you, Zariah. I just couldn't carry the truth anymore. I thought if I told you, maybe something would change. And something did, she replied, her voice trembling for the first time. You made me feel something I tried not to feel, something deep, something that scared me more than war, more than death. They sat in silence again, the fire outside growing louder, the heat creeping into the cave like a warning. Eli pulled a small device from his pocket and tapped it. The screen blinked, showing a map with blinking red dots. They were surrounded, but there was still a path open toward the mountain base, a hidden route through the old tunnels. We can't stay here long, he said. They will scan this cave soon. We need to move, and fast. Zariah stood tall again, the soldier in her returning. She nodded and reached for her weapon, but before they left, she looked at him one last time, her voice low. If we survive this, if we reach safety, I will give you the answer you deserve. Eli smiled, not a full smile, but something close, something that said hope was still alive. Between them, he followed her out into the night, where ash rained from the sky like gray snow. They ran again through the trees toward the hidden path, toward the mountain where safety waited, maybe, or maybe more danger, but they had no choice now. No time for fear, no time for love, only time to fight and survive. As they reached the first tunnel entrance, a strange sound echoed from behind. A new enemy ship landed, not the usual kind, bigger, darker, older. Zariah stopped in her tracks, eyes wide. That is not from their fleet, she whispered. That ship is from the old wars. Eli pulled her into the tunnel just in time as beams of green light sliced the air above their heads. Whatever was coming, it was different, more powerful, maybe even ancient. Their feet pounded against the metal floor of the old tunnel, the walls glowing dimly with forgotten lights, long dead, now flickering back to life as if sensing their presence. Zariah touched the walls with awe and fear. Something inside her stirred, a memory, maybe a warning. Eli kept his eyes on the map, but his mind was still on her, on the words she had said, on the words she had not said. Yet he knew now this journey was no longer just about peace or survival. It was about finding the truth between them and facing whatever future waited at the end. The tunnel stretched far ahead, with walls made of ancient metal that pulsed faint blue lights every few steps. The air was cold and smelled like rust, and silence followed them like a shadow. The only sound was their boots on the floor and the quiet hum of the walls, as if the place had been sleeping for centuries and now had finally woken up. Eli walked behind Zariah, watching her every move, her silver hair gently flowing with each step, the memory of her voice still echoing in his mind. If we survive, I will give you the answer you deserve. He repeated the words in his head like a song that gave him courage. Azaria moved like she had walked this path before, even though she never said so. She touched the walls with care, sometimes pausing to look at strange markings, symbols of a language that only she could understand. Her glowing eyes reflected the ancient light, and for a moment, Eli forgot they were running for their lives. He finally asked her, "What is this place?" Zaria did not look back, but her voice was clear. "This tunnel was built during the first contact war, before humans and my people understood each other, before peace was even a dream. It was used to hide and escape when things went wrong, and now it may be our only hope." Eli walked beside her, now their shoulders close. He looked at the markings and saw pictures of beings both human and alien standing together, holding hands. Some images were broken, cracked by time, but the message remained: unity, strength, love through struggle. "Did your people really believe in peace back then?" he asked, "or was it just circle?" Azaria stopped, turned to him slowly, her eyes softer than usual. "Peace was never the plan at first. We were told humans were dangerous, wild, full of chaos, but when I met you, I saw something different, something no training had prepared me for." Eli smiled and said, "You mean charm and bravery and good looks?" She raised an eyebrow, almost smiled, but kept walking as if she could not let herself fall too deep into the moment. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber with a round ceiling and a strange tree growing in the center. It had silver leaves and a trunk that sparkled under the light's roots spread across the floor like veins. The air here felt different, like time itself moved slower. Zaria stepped toward the tree, placed her hand on its trunk, and closed her eyes for a moment. Eli stayed back, watching, unsure what she was doing. She opened her eyes and said, "This tree is sacred to my kind. It records memories, not just in words, but in feelings. Touch it, and it will show you something you need to see." Eli hesitated, then slowly reached out his hand and touched the bark. It felt warm and alive. Suddenly his mind was filled with visions, not his own. He saw Zaria training as a young warrior, eyes cold, voice sharp. He saw her watching humans from a distance, her face full of judgment. Then slowly that judgment turned to curiosity, then admiration, then something deeper. He saw himself through her eyes, how she noticed the way he laughed even in danger, how he helped injured soldiers without hesitation, how he spoke to her with respect, not fear, how he made her feel less like a weapon and more like a person. The vision faded and Eli stepped back, breathless, his heart pounding. "So you did feel something all this time?" Zaria nodded, her face serious. "I fought it every day. I told myself it was weakness, that it would cost me everything, but when you said you loved me, something broke inside, and I realized I was tired of pretending." Before Eli could speak, the ground shook. A loud roar filled the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. The enemy had found them, or something else had awakened. They ran toward the far end of the chamber, where another tunnel opened. The shaking grew stronger, and from behind came the sound of metal twisting, like a giant door being forced open. Eli turned back for a second, saw a shadow entering the chamber, tall, wide, moving without sound. It did not look like any enemy soldier he had seen before. It looked ancient, made of both machine and flesh, its eyes burning like fear. Zaria pulled him forward faster, now her voice urgent. "That thing is not part of the war. It is something older, something my people buried long ago." They sprinted through the tunnel, hearts racing, the path ahead full of darkness and unknown turns behind them. The ancient being followed, slow but unstoppable. Zaria used a small device to seal the tunnel door behind them. For now they were safe, but not for long. They stopped in a small room, breathing hard. Eli looked at her, eyes full of questions and fear and something more. "You said you were tired of pretending," he whispered. "So what?" Now Zaria looked at him, her face lit by the faint light of the wall behind her. She stepped closer, her voice low. "I do not want to run from the truth anymore, and if we survive this, I will stop hiding. I promise you that." Eli reached for her hand, and this time she did not pull away. For the first time they stood not as soldier and ally, not as human and alien, but as two souls connected by more than mission or war. The path ahead was still full of danger, but something had changed between them, something stronger than fear, something real. The air in the tunnel grew colder as Eli and Zaria walked deeper into the ancient path. The walls began to change from metal to stone, carved with symbols that pulsed faint blue light. The lights flickered like memories trapped in time. The Ground beneath their boots was soft with alien moss, and the silence felt heavy, like the place had been waiting for someone to Redden's area. Moved slower now, her eyes scanning every corner as if searching for something she had lost. Her steps were cautious but familiar. Eli watched her closely. He could feel something was different, not just around them but inside her. Her body moved like a warrior, but her heart seemed full of something softer, something uncertain. They entered a vast chamber. Shaped like a dome, the ceiling high above sparkled with tiny lights that looked like stars the floor held. A large circular platform with an old symbol in the center. Eli stepped forward and brushed his hand across the surface. The platform lit up with a soft hum, revealing images floating in the air above them. Zarya walked to the center and raised her hand. The images grew brighter and clearer. They showed her people long ago, standing beside humans, fighting a great enemy together, building peace side by side. Eli watched in awe. The history he had only heard in whispers was now alive around him. This place was built for remembrance, she said, voice steady, but her eyes full of something deeper. It was meant to remind us of the price of war and the value of unity. Then why was it forgotten? Eli asked, stepping closer. Because unity faded, she answered, her gaze locked on the glowing figures. My people grew afraid of love, afraid of losing control, afraid that emotions would make them weak. And so they erased what they could not understand. Eli placed his hand over hers and said, maybe they were wrong. Maybe love is not weakness. Maybe it is what makes us strong enough to fight again. And Zarya turned her face toward him, eyes wide, lips parting like she wanted to speak, but the chamber suddenly trembled, dust falling from the ceiling, the lights above flickering. The enemy, or something worse, was near again. They ran toward the far side, where another tunnel opened, carved from the same ancient stone. The path curved downward, leading into darkness where even the lights on the wall began to fade. Eli turned on his wrist light and held it ahead. Shadows danced in every direction. Zarya stopped near a door etched with symbols different from before, older, more wild. She placed her hand on it, and it opened slowly, revealing a room filled with floating stones and a pool of water glowing green at the center. Eli stepped in slowly. The air felt thick with energy, every breath heavy with emotion. This is the temple of Ban Zarya whispered long ago. Warriors came here to prove their loyalty, not just to the mission, but to each other. If their hearts were true, the temple would guide them. If not, it would turn them away forever. Looked at her, his voice low. Are we ready for this? She nodded slowly, her hand reaching for his, and for the first time since he confessed, her fingers wrapped around his with no hesitation, no fear, only warmth. The stones around them began to spin slowly. The pool in the center rippled and a beam of light rose from it, covering them both in soft blue glow. Images began to appear around them, not of war or peace, but of memories. Their memories, laughter under alien rain, battles fought shoulder to shoulder. Quiet nights looking at stars, moments when love was there but unspoken. Then a shadow appeared in the beam, a creature made of their doubts, their fears, their pain. It grew tall with sharp edges and burning eyes. It spoke in a voice that sounded like both of them saying things they feared the most. She will never love you. You are just a mission. You are just a soldier. You are not enough. Eli stepped forward, fists clenched, heart pounding. I may not be perfect, but what I feel is real, and I would rather be broken with truth than whole. With Zarya stood beside him, her voice firm. I have run from my heart for too long, but I cannot anymore. I choose this. I choose him. The shadow screamed and shattered into dust. The light from the pool grew brighter and warmer, wrapping around them like a promise. The spinning stones slowed and lowered until one hovered in front of them, glowing brighter than all the others. Zarya reached for it, and as her hand touched the stone, it melted into her skin, leaving a glowing mark on her palm. The temple has accepted us, she whispered, eyes wide with wonder. They left the chamber hand in hand, their hearts lighter, but the world outside still dark. As they stepped back into the tunnel, a voice crackled through Eli's unit. It was the base commander speaking fast under static. We need you back now. The enemy is moving toward the core and we are losing ground. Eli looked at Zarya. She nodded and said, then we have no more time to wait. They ran again, but this time not just for survival. They ran with something stronger, a bond that had been tested and proven real in the oldest place of their people. Under the stars of a forgotten past, they raced through the tunnel, the blue lights now brighter than before, as if the ancient path itself had felt the bond between them. The air around them pulsed with warmth, not just from energy, but from something deeper. Something alive. They were not the same people who had entered the Temple of Bonds. They were marked now, not by duty, but by choice, not by fear, but by truth. Saraya moved with purpose, her grip on Eli's hand firm, like she never wanted to let go. The mark on her palm still glowing, a soft blue light matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of meaning, full of everything they had not said before, full of everything that had finally come to. The surface, the tunnel opened into a wide platform built into the side of a mountain. Clouds rolled below them, and the wind howled across the sky. The city they had protected for years was now in flames. The enemy ships hovered like insects above it, pouring fire from the skies and tearing through defenses. The base commander's voice returned in the unit, broken by static. "We are falling back. We need evacuation." "Now repeat." "We are falling back." Saraya looked at Eli and her eyes burned with decision. "We are not leaving," she said. "Not yet." He nodded without question, because something in her voice made him believe there was still a way to turn this tide. They entered a small command outpost built into the rock. Eli rushed to the control panel and began scanning frequencies. Zaraya opened a hidden locker and pulled out an old device shaped like a sphere, pulsing with red light. "This is a last defense beacon," she said. "It can activate the storm shield, but only if placed at the core of the city." Eli looked at her and saw what she was about to say. "You want to go down there, place it yourself while everything is falling apart." She nodded without hesitation, and he stepped forward, grabbed her shoulders, and said, "Then I'm going with you." Zarya opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. She knew this was not just his mission. Now it was their bond, their fight, their choice to stand together. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They left the outpost and boarded a small hovercraft, damaged but still flying. They flew low through the smoke, dodging falling debris and laser fire. The city below was chaos. Streets cracked, buildings crumbled, screams echoed from every direction, but at the center stood the old crystal tower where the shield generator still waited unused. As they landed behind the ruins of an old market, Zariah handed Eli a second device, this one small and green, shaped like a leaf. "If I do not make it, place this on the secondary node and activate it with your voice. It will work just once. You are not going alone," he said firmly, and she did not argue again. They moved through the rubble together, weapons drawn, shadows darting around them. Enemy soldiers built like machines, cold and fast, blocked their path. They fought side by side, back to back, hearts beating in perfect rhythm. She moved with grace. He moved with strength. Together they were something more than fighters. They were a force shaped by love and forged in fire. They reached the tower and found the main chamber, dark and broken, sparks flying from the walls. The shield core still pulsed faintly at the center, but its power was low. Zariah ran forward, opened the device, and placed it inside the core. As she activated it, a loud noise shook the chamber, and enemy soldiers burst through the doors. Eli jumped in front of her, firing his weapon, but they were too many. Zariah pulled him behind a shield and pressed a button on her wrist armor, sending a signal to the city systems. The storm shield began to rise slowly, covering the sky with a web of energy, blocking enemy fire and pushing ships away. But one last soldier charged through and aimed at Eli. Zariah stepped in the way, took the hit, and fell to the ground, her body trembling from the force. Eli dropped beside her, grabbed her hand, and shouted her name over and over. She looked at him, her voice faint and broken. "I wanted more time with you." He shook his head, tears in his eyes. "You are not leaving. Not now, not after everything we have been through." She smiled weakly and said, "I never told you the full truth. I loved you long before you said it. I just did not know how to be anything but what I was made to be. You are more than what you were made to be," he said, holding her tighter. "You are mine and I am yours, and I will fight for you with everything I have." The shield above them burned bright and strong, and the enemy forces began to retreat. Their mission failed, their power broken. Eli called for help, his voice loud through the comms, and med teams arrived minutes later. Zariah was taken to the med bay, her life still burning, though faint. Eli never left her side, not even for a moment. Outside, the city rose from smoke and ash, protected by the storm shield, saved by love and courage and the bond that changed everything. The medical chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of healing machines. The walls glowed faintly with pale green light, and a gentle mist filled the air, carrying the scent of alien herbs that soothed pain and helped the body recover. Eli sat beside the bed, eyes fixed on Zariah, his hand wrapped around hers, never letting go. She lay still, her silver skin dull, her breath shallow. The wound she took was deep, and the energy blast had damaged her core systems. Her body was strong, but even warriors had limits. Eli watched her chest rise and fall with every slow breath, and in those moments he felt helpless, like a child waiting for a miracle. He whispered to her, though she could not answer, told her stories from Earth, talked about the time they got lost in the caves of planet Viren, how she yelled at him for breaking the translator, how they laughed until their stomachs hurt, how she smiled at him when he found the right path by accident, and how that smile never left his mind. Days passed, but Eli never moved from her side. Doctors came and went, giving updates, but none brought answers. He heard words like stable but uncertain, strong but fading, phrases that meant everything and nothing. Then one evening, as the suns dipped behind the mountain, casting gold light across the sky, Zariah opened her eyes just slightly, her gaze blurry but searching, and when they found Eli, she tried to speak. Her lips moved without sound. He leaned close and said, "I am here, Zariah. I never left." She blinked once and then again, and her voice came out soft and cracked. "You look tired?" He laughed, a sound filled with relief and pain, and said, "You are the one who got shot, and you are worried about how I look." She smiled, just a little, her fingers weak but warm in his hand. "I dreamed you left." "Never," he said, "never ever." Her eyes closed again, but this time it was sleep, not darkness, her body healing bit by bit, her heart stronger than anyone had guessed. Over the next few days, Zariah grew stronger. She walked again, slowly at first, then with more purpose. Her people came to see her, some with pride, some with confusion, some with fear. They had never seen one of their own choose a human over duty and tradition. The council called for her. They wanted answers, they wanted control, they wanted to remind her of the laws written long before peace had even begun. Zariah stood before them, not as a soldier but as a woman who had seen the truth, who had touched something real. She told them everything, told them how Eli never gave up, how he protected not just her but their mission, how he taught her to see the strength in love. One council member raised his voice, said, "Emotion is dangerous," said, "connection leads to weakness," said, "duty comes before desire." Zariah answered with calm words but fire in her eyes, "If love is weakness, then why did it give me the strength to save a city? If connection is a flaw, then why did it make us faster, smarter, better? If duty is only cold and empty, then I do not want it." They could not respond, they could not break what had been proven, not in a debate but in the field, in blood and fire and sacrifice. After the hearing, Zariah returned to Eli, her body tired, but her spirit light. He waited outside the chamber, pacing like a storm. When he saw her, he stopped and searched her face for the answer. She stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "They did not understand, but they will learn." He held her close, breathing in her the scent of rain and stars. "And promise." "You scared me," he said. "I thought I lost you." "Not yet," she replied, and not without saying what I should have said long ago. Eli pulled back, looked into her eyes and waited. She touched his chest over his heart and said, "I loved you before I even knew what love was. I loved your questions, your jokes, your way of seeing light in dark places. I tried to deny it because I thought it made me weak, but it made me alive." He kissed her then, soft and slow, like the end of a long storm, like the beginning of peace. They stood together under the twin moons, holding each other while the city healed, while the stars watched, while the wind carried the sound of something new. That night, they walked through the city streets side by side. People watched from windows and rooftops, some with wonder, some with hope, some still unsure, but none could deny what they had seen, a human and an alien, not as enemies, not as Eli's, but as something more, as a sign that love did not care about borders or rules or blood. It cared only about truth, and their truth was clear to anyone who looked close enough. The stars looked different that night, as if the sky itself had been waiting for something to change the air above. The city was clear, the smoke finally gone, the fires no longer burning, the streets below quiet after so many weeks of fear and fighting. And Eli stood on the same glowing cliff where it all began, the wind cool against his skin, the memories alive in every breath. He took Zariah, walked beside him, her silver hair flowing gently, her hand resting in his like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there. Her eyes watched the sky too, but her heart was somewhere deeper, remembering everything they had survived, everything they had lost, and everything they still held. Peace had not come easily, the council had argued. The humans had worried. The scars of war were still fresh in the minds of many, but the city had not fallen. The people had not given up. The bond between two different hearts had sparked something greater than politics, greater than fear. Eli had been offered a ship, a way home, medals for bravery and missions waiting on Earth. But he said no. He said home was no longer a place, it was a person, and that person was not on Earth anymore. She was here on this strange, beautiful planet that had given him pain and purpose. Buffariah had been given orders, new titles, a chance to lead again under the flag of her people, but she turned them down with grace and fire. She said leadership without freedom meant nothing. She said if they wanted her voice, they had to accept her heart too, and her heart had already chosen. Together they built something new, not a station, not a ship, not a monument, but a space where humans and aliens could meet, share, speak, learn, not just from textbooks or screens, but from each other, from real moments, from laughter, from healing, from truth. The old crystal tower had become a place of unity, the same place where Zariah almost died, now pulsed with light, powered by hope, and guarded not by soldiers but by volunteers who believed in what it stood for. Eli taught young cadets how to fly, how to fix machines, how to speak with respect and curiosity. He made mistakes, told terrible jokes, got lost more than once, but always found his way back to Zariah, who would be waiting with that half smile that said she knew he would. Zariah trained the new peacekeepers, taught them strength without cruelty, honor without silence, love without shame. She spoke of battles and treaties, but also of long nights under stars and soft hands in fire, and how the hardest war was always the one inside. Together they were not perfect, but they were real, and real was more than enough. One evening, as the twin suns sank low, Eli brought her back to the glowing cliff, his voice nervous, his hands fidgeting with something small and round hidden in his pocket. Do you remember the night I told you how I felt? He asked, looking out at the sky, not sure if he could look at her just yet. Yes, she said gently, her voice calm. I remember every word. I thought it might break everything he said. I thought you would walk away, or worse, that you would stay, but never feel the same end. Yet, she said, stepping closer, I stayed, and I felt, and I still do. Eli turned to her, finally, eyes wide, with something more than fear, something more than love, something old and wild and full of truth. He dropped to one knee, pulled the small item from his pocket. It was a ring crafted from a meteorite he found on their first mission, polished and set with a single crystal from the Temple of Bonds, the same crystal that had glowed when they proved their hearts. Uriah, he said slowly, not just with hope, but with the weight of everything they had seen, everything they had lost, everything they had dared to want. Will you stay with me, not as a soldier, not as a savior, but as my partner, my equal, my love? Uriah knelt too, took his hands into hers, eyes shimmering, not with tears, but with light. I already have, she whispered, and I always will. They stayed there as the stars blinked into view, as the sky turned deep blue, and the world seemed quiet for the first time in forever. And far above, in the dark between the stars, something watched, not with threat, not with hate, but with wonder, because love had crossed worlds, had crossed wounds, had crossed everything once thought impossible. And below it, two hearts beat, not as human and alien, not as past and future, but as one. Forever was never promised, but in that moment it was real.